The files that were recently posted to Elon Musk's Twitter account, or Twitter platform, revealed that the FBI is now in the speech policing business, tasking 80 agents with the online censorship of American civilians. Don't you think maybe the intel community has something better it could be doing with its time and resources?
You would think so. It's one of those things I've been saying for years, be like, what's going on here? No, it's yet another conspiracy that turns out to be true, right? Every conspiracy theory has about a 6-month window, and then we realize it wasn't actually a conspiracy theory, it was actually just a conspiracy by big tech with the highest echelons of American law enforcement. I mean, that should scare everyone. When you see what's going on, when you see the manipulation of those things, I think the FBI, rather than every article I read about someone shooting up a school saying, well, he was on our radar, maybe if the 80 people were actually doing law enforcement rather than policing memes and conservative accounts, maybe we wouldn't be reading about these things after the fact as tragedies. Maybe they'd actually prevent something for a change. But I'm not going to hold my breath, because the reality, and we do have to make the distinction between the door kickers, because I see them every day. I see them at a conference like this. Hey, I'm an agent at the FBI. I love what you guys are doing. I'm ashamed of what's happening with our leadership, but they still have to play within those systems. And it's a disgrace what's going on, but all the things that we've been saying yet again turned out to be true. Whether it was Twitter themselves shadow banning, colluding. I know I was one of the people that they wanted to eliminate their accounts. Those chats amongst the highest executives at Twitter are coming out. Of course I knew it. When I said it at the time, they go, how could you possibly know? I was like, well, I used to get like 10,000 retweets a post, now I'm getting 3. There's something going on. It wasn't my content that changed significantly, it was that they were doing it very aggressively, very flagrantly, and they were lying to the American people. And frankly, they lied before Congress. They'll get away with it because they're Democrats. If I'd have lied before Congress in my 50 hours of testimony for nonsense, also made up, and I'm sure we'll find out more about that in the not too distant future, in the Russia hoax, I imagine I wouldn't be given the same benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, and more on the files, they also revealed that the FBI was still contacting Twitter just as recently as last month, ahead of the 2022 midterm elections, to censor more accounts. And one of those being RSBN, which, we all know, they're known for live streaming your father's rallies and speeches. So how much damage do you think has been done with all of this the behavior of the censorship from social media?
Well, I think incredible. This would be what they would call election interference, right? If conservatives were doing this to a liberal candidate, imagine the sound bites, imagine the outrage. And yet when this comes out and it's as clear as day, crickets, not a peep. And you know why? Because the average American newsroom, what's going on there is absolutely no different than what went on at Twitter, at other big tech, in the mainstream media. They're all the same. Twitter's just the first one to be exposed. But if we think what happened at Twitter is any different than what happens at the Washington Post, or the New York Times, or ABC News, or any of them, you're out of your minds. We've been dealing in a deficit forever. I've been saying it for years because it's been so apparent. We live in a country, we want to believe that this stuff isn't happening in America right now, because this reeks of what goes on in communist China or Russia or any other despotic regime across the world. It's happening here right now. We all knew it. A few of us were brave enough to say it. There were a couple others and they got canceled because no one wanted to expose. Maybe a couple people were big enough, it was hard to cancel because they had other ways to get their message out. But that's going on in America in 2022. It has to stop. But we need people brave enough to actually get out there and do it. We have to challenge these systems, and we have to be in that battle. It's everything.
Yeah. So on a lighter note, how amusing is it to see the left wing just have a complete collective meltdown about them getting banned on Twitter?
I love it. They're doxing people in real life. If I doxed someone in real life and it led to their child being stalked, it would be outrage. When it happens to Elon Musk, when he's exposing the radical leftists who cheered when a conservative account was thrown off. Some, mom staying at home having some fun, posting memes, or someone who perhaps made their livelihood online as a conservative. They cheered those people's cancellation. They cheered them getting fired. They cheered their workplace being closed if they supported conservative causes. And they lose their Twitter account access for 12 hours, and it's the end of days. The irony and the hypocrisy is so glaring, it's so ridiculous. They're finally getting a taste of their own medicine, and that's the reality. They can't compete on a level playing field. They're losing their minds because they're losing a competitive advantage that gave them, 10x, the coverage that they deserved. I saw these, liberal accounts, and I can appreciate humor even if it's against what I believe. They weren't funny. They weren't good. But you'd see some account with 3 followers getting 50,000 retweets for something that ridiculous, and you just realized exactly what we were up against, how stacked the deck truly was. Now that it's exposed, now that they've lost that competitive advantage, they're losing their mind because they're not good enough to actually compete on an equal playing field. And that's been pretty clear for a long time.
Yeah. So then last one, what does the conservative movement do to fight back and win? Right
now, it's about elections. If we're not ballot harvesting legally, whatever we can do, if we're not playing the game that they're playing, you could run, someone just shy of Jesus Christ himself right now against the dumbest and most radical liberal and not win. Right? That's the game right now. People are going to argue about who's the better candidate. As far as I'm concerned, at this point, if we're not addressing those issues, it doesn't matter. That's going to be a harsh thing for people to hear or believe. That's the reality. We have to be playing the game the way the Democrats do. Maybe once we regain power, we can change the system, we can make it fair, we can make it that magically, the ballot machines in the conservative counties are the only ones that never seem to work, that once you go past midnight, it always seems to go one way. We can change it and do something like every other country in the world does, where they have fair elections, they can figure out these things on the same day. Until we're actually in control to make those changes, we have to be playing the game on the battlefield set by the other side. That's not an easy task, but that's frankly the only thing that we need to address right now. We're not losing on issues. I can promise you that. Okay? There's not even left-leaning parents that want their 3-year-old to be having conversations with their radical leftist, purple-haired teacher about changing their gender. That ain't happening. Okay? The average leftist, and I know this even before Twitter sort of became more neutral, I could post about men in women's sports, biological men in women's sports, and people who hate my guts would say, I hate Don's guts, but he's right about this one. We're not losing on those issues, and those are the issues that are the hills to die on of today's Democrat Party. We're not losing on the fact that people are spending twice at the pump what they used to pay. We're not losing on the fact that we don't want to be in a nuclear war with Russia. We're not losing on inflation and what's going on in the economy. We're winning all of those issues, but none of that matters if we're not playing the game at the ballot box, if we're not playing the games the way we need to be playing on election day. We have to adapt those techniques. We can't be adapting what the radical left does. They weaponize COVID. They change systems, whether legally or illegally, it didn't matter, and they're probably never going back because they control enough of the systems, especially in the swing states, where it doesn't matter. It has to be our number one focus, and there's nothing even close as far as I'm concerned.